Good Erev Shabbos. This week in the Parsha of Bo, we learn the first mitzvahs that were commanded to the Jewish people. This was still in Egypt. God tells Moshe to tell the Bnei Israel about the mitzvahs. Now, what's very interesting is although we have begun Sefer Bereshis, we started on Simchas Torah, and we're more than 2 months into the Torah reading cycle. Over the entire Sefer Bereshis, there was just 3 mitzvahs in the whole Bereshis. The purpose of Bereshis was not to communicate mitzvahs to the Jewish people, but rather to teach us our values and our derech eretz. But here in Parshas Bo, we learn for the first time the mitzvahs that were given to Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people as a nation. And primarily the mitzvahs that are given to the Jewish people in the Parsha are related to Pesach, the mitzvah of eating matzah, the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, all the mitzvahs associated with the Pesach, and so on and so forth. But what's interesting is that the very first mitzvah that's communicated to Klal Yisrael by Moshe in the name of Hashem is the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh. The mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, it says, "B'chodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim." This month, meaning the month of Nisan, was considered the first of all the months, Rishon hu lachem l'chad she'eshanu. That the month of Nisan was the first out of all the months. Now, a fair question has been asked, is why was the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh the very first mitzvah that was given to Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people? If there was something of supreme importance that we had to hear as a people, one probably can come up with a list of different mitzvahs, and Rosh Chodesh would not be one of them. Yes, of course, we know every single month there's a renewal with the rotation of the moon, and every single time that the moon goes through a cycle, it waxes and it wanes. We sanctify the new month as it appears to us here on this earth, signifying the new month. But why was this chosen as the very first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people? Another question I would ask, Rashi quotes the famous Medrash that Moshe struggled with this mitzvah. It says, Rashi says, Niskasha Moshe al-Moed al-Habana. Moshe struggled about the molad of the renewal of the moon. Be'ezer shi'uter, exactly what size of the moon do we have to see in order to sanctify the month? And finally, it says that God showed it to him. It says that God showed Moshe and he said to him, this is the way the moon should look, see it, and sanctify it. So a fair question needs to be asked is why was Moshe struggling with this? I mean, we're not talking about someone that was had an elementary knowledge of Torah and mitzvahs. We're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. And all the mitzvahs, this was the one that gave him the most difficulty. This was the one that gave him pause. This is the one that he needed some hand-holding and to be explained exactly about Rosh Chodesh. Everything else was absolutely clear to him. But Rosh Chodesh he struggled with. What was it about Rosh Chodesh that he struggled with? So there's a certain idea, I think it comes from the Maral, that talks about the purpose of mitzvahs in general and the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh in particular. The purpose of the mitzvahs in general are to elevate the mundane around us. We take a cup of wine on Friday night, we make the kiddush on it, we infuse the spirituality into the mundane. We elevate the world around us. A man and a woman come under a chuppah, and the man says to the woman, give us her ring and says, Kadeshusly, they sanctify the relationship by transforming it from the mundane into the holy. That is the general formula of mitzvahs. But we take the spiritual and we fuse it into the physical. We hereby elevate the physical. The question that we have to be asked in terms of Rosh Chodesh, what are we elevating? What tangible item is being elevated in the case of Rosh Chodesh? Actually, after all, we're just sanctifying the month. That's what Moshe was struggling with. But generally, we take a mitzvah, we take the matzah, we're elevating it, we're infusing kedusha, holiness into the mundane. But why is it? What is it about Rosh Chodesh? So the Morel says that when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, we're teaching us a great lesson, not just about Rosh Chodesh, but in general, about the sanctification of time. Yes, we can sanctify objects. Yes, we can sanctify people. We can sanctify, consecrate animals even for sacrifice. But how do you sanctify time? Time is an intangible. But the truth of the matter is, our time in our lives is the most precious resource that we have. A day goes by, will never come back. If that day has not been utilized correctly, you can utilize future days correctly, but that day never comes back. Every single day is a precious gift. Every single day is a precious resource that we have. It's our responsibility to utilize that properly. And that's the deeper message of Rosh Chodesh. It's not just about declaring it's the beginning of the month. Yes, that's Rosh Chodesh 101. But Rosh Chodesh 202 and 303 and 404 teach us the deeper message about the Jew's role in sanctifying the time in his or her life. We must always utilize every single day and every moment and sanctify the time in our lives appropriately. And that's why this mitzvah was chosen first. This mitzvah was chosen first because before we get into any other specifics, it's important for us to take stock of our most precious resource that God has given us in this wonderful world, and that is the time that He has blessed us with. We have to reflect and wonder if we're utilizing our time correctly, because that's our mandate and that's our challenge. So when we read the Parsha of Chodesh Zel Rosh Chodashim, let us remember it's not just teaching us about Rosh Chodesh. It's not just teaching us about the month of Nisan. It's also teaching us that. But it's not just teaching us that. It's teaching us the larger responsibility that we have in our lives to sanctify our time appropriately. But this is not easy because we have a lot of demands on our time. We have a lot of distractions in our time. But let us remember the lesson of Rosh Chodesh and always remember our mandate is to sanctify the time in our lives. Good night, Shabbos.